Hey there, everybody. Welcome to week four. Week three was kind of the big one. That was sort of like, I guess, the midterm, if you will. So, I mean, from here on out, hopefully, I don't know if you looked at the syllabus. Kind of, that was kind of the hard part. We have one more quiz, a couple more assignments, more kind of like thinking, some history stuff. Hopefully, at this point, you're kind of have a better idea of how to formulate historical ideas and put in context, use the course materials to help answer questions. So, um, yeah, I think that's about it. And this week we're to the 20th century. I sort of tried to divide that up into sort of this overarching the conflicts of the first half of the 20th century, which are obviously, hopefully, from the lecture you understood, are pretty world. They're called world wars for a reason because they drew in, pretty much the entire world. World War One. I kind of looked at the causes of that. I guess both these wars. I'm not a really big military historian. I'm not really, wars happen. I'm more of like a cause and effect person. I like to think of, okay, what were the things that were causing this war to, or this event to occur? What were the effects of that after it happened? So, World War One. I tried to kind of run through this sort of cusp of the 20th century. This optimism. Things were going for particularly Europe. Things were going very well. There was progress. Economies were thriving. Industrialization was bringing these new technologies, innovations. Um, Nationalism was really sort of vibrant. People were very strong on their nations, and for Europe, one element of that nation was having overseas empires. So that inherently brought in this sort of internal conflict and competition. Um, and then it all sort of broke down with this assassination of the Archduke of Austria-Hungary. And again, I've kind of been talking about them a little bit throughout the first part of the semester, so now you kind of see why they've always been around. At one time, they were like the largest monarchical family in all of Europe, controlling Austria, Hungary, Spain, parts of the Netherlands. They've sort of been declining, and then their heir apparent Franz Ferdinand gets shot by Serbian nationalists, right? This idea of these new groups that want their nationalism. That sparks all sorts of things, these secret alliances and blank checks, which I sort of talk about. Then boom, this war that was supposed to be really easy, but it wasn't. It was actually quite long and deadly. And these new technologies that were bringing about all these innovations get sort of focused on these trench warfare. It becomes a war of attrition. So we sort of talked about that. And then I used to split these up, but I'm kind of putting these together because I think it makes more sense to look at how World War One played into World War Two, because it was sort of, I mean, really, you could maybe say that there wasn't really an end to it. I mean, the antagonisms and the resentment continued up into World War II. The 1920s, things were sort of rebuilding, but there was still a lot of, Europe was still struggling. These overseas empires were getting extracted from as Europe's tried to rebuild. And then the Great Depression hit, and that really sort of threw everything off. So, World War II was this sort of economic background, this rise of fascism that I tried to sort of talk about a little bit, explain that. And then I gave a short summary of what happened in World War II, and then it was over. But sort of Europe and the Pacific. World War II is much more sort of broadly global. But that's the conflict stuff. Hopefully, if you had a little bit of idea of what these wars were, hopefully you have a little bit better idea of sort of the causes and names and events from those. There's been a lot of movies made from them. We'll talk about that in a second. And then what I'm really more interested in, and hopefully you got this from the second lesson here, is the changes, right? The wars cause things, big events cause humanity to react to them. In World War One, there was definitely this sort of like, oh my God, what did we just do, right? This age of anxiety, all this great stuff that happened, and then we just sit on two lines and blast each other to smithereens. Like, why did we do this? And you see this reflected in art, literature. I kind of tried to walk through that. Architecture, right? The people sort of like, all right, what is this new world, this progress? I mean, did we really progress? We were going through this, like everything was great, and then we just like crashed into ourselves. So why is that? So I talked about that and sort of this idea of people trying to grapple with that, and you see that in literature. I gave T.S. Eliot as an example, which is this famous poem written in 1922. And then the other side of that coin, right, is that you have like the rest of the world being like, wait a minute, maybe this form of imperialism really isn't work. Like, do we really want to take part in these wars going on in Europe? What does it benefit us? and that's where this self-determination comes on. And you have kind of, we went around the world. One big reaction of World War One, which will then, as we'll find out in upcoming lectures, will come to fruition after World War II, is the breaking part of these empires, these building of nations on a global level. So again, if we kind of follow that paradigm through, sort of the if you want to say the first nation of America, and then this phase of revolutions in the Americas in general, and then this age of imperialism, and then World War II, World War One, World War II, this ideas of this nation spread, and then after World War II, you really get this decolonization, where all these nations that we have today come about, and they're all fraught, as we will learn, with issues of nation building that we've seen historically. So, yeah, and then the World War II sort of effects. I tried to kind of look at. I mean, a lot of people look at World War II as very instructive. Like, this is things we can learn about and learn as humanity. I mean, the Holocaust is a very good example. I tried to kind of walk through that it didn't just happen, sort of the history of it, zoom it out so we can maybe identify those strands and try to address them. Talked about Japanese internment, which is sort of similar to this idea of lumping a whole group into one. We talked about the atomic age. I mean, we live in the nuclear age now. It's a big deal. It's definitely a different new phase of human history. Talked about a little bit about women at war, and we'll kind of look into that, and that'll be sort of a component of when we look at social cultural movements coming up here. That, I mean, the roles of women in World War One, World War II, rights of voting rights, all these things will really come to fruition when we look at the women's movements, women's rights, civil rights, those kind of things that are right around the corner here post World War II. Yeah, and then kind of just the beginning of the Cold War, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So that's kind of the main themes and ideas of things we talked about. Discussion posts this week, pretty straightforward. Just 4 questions. Choose one of those. They're pretty historically based. Just kind of, they're like, here, I've listened to the lecture. Here's what I learned, kind of stuff. Yeah, not too much thinking on you. I mean, definitely add your own thoughts and stuff. Put them in your own words, but what are these ideas there? Padlet, again, World War One and World War II. There's been a lot of movies made about both of these. They're very popular topics. Documentaries. Just choose one. If it's one you've already watched, that's great. But I just want to say, this isn't a summary of the movie, right? But this is how does this movie play into the history of the period? So use some of the course materials to expand on that, right? Maybe you watched it like Saving Private Ryan, but now you can kind of think about D-Day in a little more context, or maybe the European theater post that, or zoom out to the European theater in general, right? And those kind of ideas. Then the other last thing, I did post the five W's as well from quiz 2. I got them over here. Just kind of, again, take a look at those. I mean, pretty impressed. A lot of people did good with it. The big thing is the dissemination of knowledge. That's important, right? A lot of people talked about the Bible and Protestant Reformation and scientific revolution. Great. The one I put up there, even connected to this, I talked about the public sphere and Habermas, how it kind of lead to modernity. So that was a good one. I thought it was a good example of using the course material and explaining that term in larger context. Steam engine, similarly, a lot of people did a good job explaining it. I really wanted to see how that connected, or you show me how that connected to the Industrial Revolution, right? So that was what I was really looking for. In that one, Wollstonecraft, again, people did a good job of summarizing her main points in her major text, A Vindication of the Rights of Women, how, equality and stuff. And then, the one thing I was looking for, how does this play into the Enlightenment? If you could name a few things in the Enlightenment there. Some people talked about John Locke and various things, tabula rasa stuff, liberty and equality. Was good. Simon Bolivar, again, sort of a revolutionary in South America. I was looking for this idea of what were these revolutions there, and if you could connect them back, I mean, this age of revolution, try to, again, sort of zoom out a little bit. Last one here, Opium Wars. Again, a lot of people did a good job answering this, what was going on in China, but again, this is what I was looking for, that next phase there is how does this connect to larger contexts of imperialism, maybe in Africa or India. So that's that. Good job, everybody. Keep plugging away, and see you next week.